Ridley Scott's Alien is one of the most influential horror films ever made, and perhaps the most influential movie for the modern movie monster. Everything about this film is planned out and deliberate, and while that can be said for most of Ridley Scott's films, the deliberate nature of the directing of this movie in particular creates an atmosphere like no other. I can't think of many other horror films, or films in general, which cultivate such an engaging atmosphere. Every room is dark, moody, lit dangerously. The sets feel, on one hand, ominous, and on another hand, threatening. Mostly because of the integration of tubes, wiring, and plating, all of which just look a little bit like a xenomorph. Even in well-lit areas, you can never truly be sure the characters on screen are safe, as there are so many spots in the background that could, quite easily, be hiding spaces for the alien. This also ties into what I think is the core of the conflict, the powerless characters. Think about it. At what point in the movie do the characters know for certain where the alien is? There are moments where they have ideas, vague guesses, but there's always uncertainty. Couple this with the fact that the humans outnumber this creature. There's only one alien against a whole crew of people, with weapons and smarts and preparation. They should easily be able to defeat the xenomorph. And yet, almost every single one of them is killed. The power of Alien is that you're watching an entire crew of people getting decimated by one creature. These elements created a memorable, haunting film where the cast of characters is not only destroyed by the creature, but the very futility of humankind itself is felt. And then they made a sequel. James Cameron, of Terminator fame, comes sliding into the Fox offices with intent on making a sequel to Aliens. This time with more everything. More action, more Ripley, more aliens. A lot more aliens, actually. And while this movie is plenty fun, there's something missing. Something not quite right. I think Aliens doesn't understand Alien. And that's not to say this film is bad. There's actually a couple changes I like. For one, James Cameron is really good at setting up and paying off things really well, in that both the setup and the payoff establish something. We establish that Ripley is a competent member of the team and has gained the General's respect, but we also learn that Ripley can drive the construction mech. We add stakes to the initial fight in the alien nest by forcing the Marines not to use guns, but we set up the fact that there's a nuclear reactor on the planet, and so on. Perhaps the best change is the fact that Ripley isn't going back for a cat anymore. See, in the original, there's this moment where Ripley runs back into the ship to save a cat, and there's this feeling of, why can't you just leave the cat behind, but change the cat to a human child and all of a sudden everything works? Like, yeah, you can't leave the kid behind to get chest bursted. Plus, Ripley gets to be a for-real action hero this time, which is just fun. So it's fair to say that there are quite a few things that are done really well in the sequel. It's just that there's a fundamental shift in the foundation of the film, one that seems to undermine what the first film did so well. Ask yourself, how many times in the original movie did you know for certain where the alien was? Almost never, and when you did, it was usually because it was about to kill someone. The movie did a very good job of making sure you almost never knew where the xenomorph was, which made virtually every scene feel uneasy. You could never totally be certain whether or not the main characters were safe. Not to mention that the creature was in air vents. It could get anywhere it needed to with no effort. Whenever the characters are trying to fight back against it, whenever they think they have the upper hand, the creature turns out to be victorious. Contrast this with Aliens, in which you know where the creatures are almost every second of the movie. You're introduced to the base in two separate sections, the safe side and the alien side, where all the aliens live. But how do they get around? Through a tunnel. A tunnel. There's one of them. You know where the threats are, where they're going to be, and when the threats are going to show up, as the movie heavily telegraphs to you when the characters are going into dangerous places. Even the set design seems to have gone along with this philosophy. Where are the piped and paneled alien-like spaces, the ones that actually did hide a xenomorph at the very end of the movie? Instead, we get either industrial metal in the base, or it's all muddy and lumpy in the alien nest, so even in the den of the aliens, you can always tell where they are. And maybe this wouldn't be a problem if the characters were properly prepared for the environment. And that's not to say the characters don't have the skills to deal with their situations. It's actually quite the opposite. In Aliens, part of what made the creature seem so powerful was the fact that the characters had no idea how to hurt it. One of the best scenes in the movie is just the characters sitting around a table hypothesizing about what could possibly hurt the creature. They land on fire because, usually things that are alive try and move away from fire, and that's pretty much what they stick on for the entire movie. But here's the thing. They never find out if the fire actually does anything. They pretty much never hurt the xenomorph through the entire movie, and when it's finally defeated, it's blasted into space by a ship's engine. Nothing hurts the creature, at least not in any visible way. Nobody knows if anything they're doing is actually working. But see, Aliens decided to do something a little bit different. It went with The movie seems to be leading up to the first big encounter with the aliens. It's the classic setup. The team keeps bragging and talking shit, none of them taking it very seriously. So the conclusion should be that they go into the alien den and get absolutely trashed. But then more aliens end up dying than humans do. Here the aliens aren't dangerous creatures, they aren't risky obstacles, they aren't the supreme beings of the universe. They're cannon fodder. And maybe that isn't an issue in and of itself, but we're talking about a monster movie in which the main threat is the monsters, and the monsters are never actually threatening. Something that people may point to counteract the claim that Aliens seeks to make the characters all-powerful is the fact that, like in the first movie, almost everyone in the initial cast dies. Everyone but Ridley, her companion, and in the case of Aliens, the android is dead. But look not at how many people died, but how those people died. In Alien, the cast dies throwing themselves ineffectually at the xenomorph, hoping to make a difference. They die pathetically, not even knowing if what they did will help. In Aliens, the characters kill themselves heroically. They go out killing a dozen aliens, saving their friends' lives, and have enough time to make a passionate goodbye before leaving. Speaking of killing aliens, when I was watching this for the first time and the turret scene hit, I actually thought the movie might be trying to pull the wool over my eyes. Like, is this an actual honest-to-God twist? Because we're seeing a lot of turrets shooting, but not a whole lot of aliens. Maybe the aliens found some way to trick the turrets into firing, and they're about to explode out of the ceiling at any minute. It actually would have been a pretty good idea. You set up this dumb, slow, easily killable enemy, and then you pull the rug out from underneath the audience's feet, revealing that they were actually in control the entire time. But nope. They actually were just dying by the thousands. All of this has an accumulative effect of making the aliens seem not only weak, but unintelligent and predictable. There's this scene later on in the movie where Ripley is facing off against the Queen alien and these backup troops come creeping around the corner. So Ripley threatens the Queen's eggs, making her call up the support, and while I was watching, all I could think was, well, that's great, but you could have just killed those two aliens anyways. And in fact, she does, not but 2 seconds later. But what's so strange to me is that there's actually a scene in this movie that does this beautifully. Ridley and Newt are trapped inside the medical lab, with a facehugger on the loose. They have no idea where it is, no one can see through the surveillance cameras, and the doors are all locked. It's the only scene in the movie that actually feels tense. The characters aren't sure what to do, they have to act fast, they don't have any defenses. And while it's still nowhere near as interesting as any of the scenes from the original movie, it's still an incredibly engaging moment. So it's clear James Cameron could have made a movie like Alien if he wanted to, but he chose to do something else entirely, not just with the trappings, but with the core of the movie itself. What do we make of all this? Well, for one, it's clear that James Cameron was definitely not intending to make a horror movie. He was intending to make an action movie. And this is where we really start to understand the root of the problem that this movie has. Genres are slippery things because we often get into an argument over trappings as opposed to foundations. And it's not like genre blending doesn't happen. There are all kinds of subsections and Venn diagrams when it comes to genres. Alien's problem was not that it was trying to be a genre blend. It was trying to be two genres. Ask yourself, when you boil them down, what are the fundamental feelings that the horror genre and the action genre are supposed to elicit? Horror is, of course, fear, but on a more fundamental level, it's powerlessness. A clown could take your child in the middle of the suburb. A man with a knife could stab you in the shower. A creature could kill you while you were searching for your cat. Most good horror films attempt to make the characters feel powerless in the presence of a terrible force. Meanwhile, action films are built on power fantasies, which is not to say that characters in action movies don't have moments where they're less powerful, or that there aren't horror movies where the protagonist gains power by the end of the film. But the fundamental emotional cores of these two genres lay in different territories. One where people triumph, and one where people fail. Which is why I think Aliens fails where the original succeeded. It's caught between genres. It's trying to be an action movie, but it's simultaneously trying to capture what made the original film so good. And what we're left with is an action movie where the main threat needs to be terrifying, and a horror movie where the protagonists have all the power. Aliens is caught in a genre paradox.
The fog rolled in, and it's never gonna lift, I guess. Breathe against the window facing the street, scribble with my finger on the glass, trying to read the horoscope of animals long extinct, trying to read the omens in the kitchen sink.